Now I see it.
Okay,
Now I see Anne, and now
I'm
I
right
see.
here.
I can see you, Anne.
So,
I can't see both of you at the same time. That's all.
I'm very excited to, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, to this conversation. And it's a little bit more difficult for Deb because she's on a cell phone, but so anyway, this is the interplay of democracy and play in education. And I want to introduce the two people who are here. This is Deborah Meier. I'm going to read a little bit about you, Deborah. Deborah, I cut your bio.
That's fine.
You need 45 minutes to read the whole thing. So,
yes, that's fine. You can cut it down to 2 sentences.
No, Deborah Meier has been working in public education as a teacher, a principal, a writer, an advocate since the early 1960s. She started her work as an early childhood teacher in Chicago. Her family then moved to New York City in the late 1960s, where she worked as a kindergarten teacher in Central Harlem. For the next 20 years, Deborah helped revitalize public schools in New York City's East Harlem District 4. In 1974, she founded Central Park East Elementary School, sometimes known as CPE1, at a highly successful public school of choice that served predominantly local African American and Hispanic families. During the next dozen years, Meier opened 2 other Central Park East elementary schools in District 4, as well as an acclaimed secondary school, while also supporting and directing the development of similar schools throughout New York City. She helped found the Coalition of Essential Schools. In 1987, she received a MacArthur Genius Award for her work in public education. During the 1990s, she also served as an urban fellow at the Annenberg Institute. In 1995, she moved to Boston to start Mission Hill, a K-8 school in Roxbury. These schools were part of a network Meier created that helped initiate new small schools, both elementary and secondary, both in New York City and in Boston. She has always been a proponent of active project-based learning and of graduation through a series of exhibitions of high-quality work. She is the author of many books and articles, including The Power of Their Ideas, which I have right here, Lessons to America from a Small School in Harlem, and In Schools We Trust. Pretty amazing, right? And then the other incredible person who I had the absolute, I was just really excited to be able to work with her for a few years. Anna Allanbrook has been the leader of the Brooklyn New School, sometimes called PS 146, since 1997. Anna, you were a 3rd grade teacher before that, right? If I remember correctly. The Brooklyn New School offers experiential instruction through inquiry and is focused on teaching the whole child. The curriculum is integrated, with the school paying close attention to children's individual needs and interests. Collaboration among parents, staff, and administration is at the heart of the school's mission. Anna encourages teachers to develop curriculum which integrate the visual arts, music, theater, science, physical education, health, language, numeracy, and exploration. Together, these modalities enable learners to make meaning and express their ideas while understanding their bodies and their hearts. Anna believes that this type of education is necessary if we truly want to prepare our youngsters for the road ahead. And both Anna and Deborah are outspoken critics of state-mandated curriculum and high-stakes standardized testing. And Deborah has written extensively on their unreliability and class race biases. Pretty amazing, the two of you. I was thinking about this for a while. And today, this morning, I was text messaging with a friend of mine who was a teacher and a parent in Champaign, Illinois. And I was telling him about our talk today and asking him what he thought about it and what he was been thinking about during this time. And he said that parents and teachers want to hear things that are hopeful. And he really emphasized that he felt like there was no hope now, and they need to hear things that are hopeful and positive. He wants to know how schools can help children feel happiness and joy. He asked me why happiness isn't a mission of schools. It's something he's been thinking about lately. So I was thinking that both of the schools, Central Park East Schools and Brooklyn New School, understand the important role that joy and happiness plays in the life of the school. Now I want to know what your thoughts are about bringing these elements into the education of children throughout the system. Is it possible for your schools to become role models for the rest of the city, at least, or the country? I mean, that's the thing, is you have these incredible models that you started. What are you thinking about that? How can what you're, first of all, what are you thinking about what Scott said, Scott's words, which were very heartfelt?
Yeah, it's interesting because this year, that's been the word I've been using, joy. And it's kind of cool. Everyone quotes it back to me. So I must have said it at some time. Well, now that you said that, our whole focus is joy, because it blows my mind. You know that we are still, since you started talking about testing, we're still required to order our tests for the spring this year. In the midst of this pandemic, we are still getting these emails. You haven't yet ordered your ELA or your math tests. And it's like, what are you talking about? It's like the least important thing on anyone's mind, even the folks who once upon a time perhaps were seeing the value in tests. Everyone gets it now. And so it does break my heart that this focus on joy is unique to just a few schools, and it should be a universal concern. We're in a really unjoyful situation. So focusing on joy when people are struggling, when it's so hard and painful, and when the way we're communicating is this way, which is incredibly limiting for children, it's my emphasis, because it's the only hope, right?
Right.
And yet it's not what's coming down, or somehow the message hasn't gotten to the powers that be, and they're still operating business as usual. And it's so, I don't know, that's the hopeless piece in it, Yeah.
Well, that you're right, that I used to say to people when they say, well, we have to figure out what works. I said, well, if you gave every child the kind of education I had as a child, ethical culture, a private progressive school in New York City, class sizes around 15, music, art, and the full array of things, and teachers who got sabbaticals so they could do interesting things and felt really some ownership over their work, and were treated with enormous respect. If you just gave that same, now it's more expensive, but if you think it's important for rich people, or if they think it's important for their children, it seems to me, given all the other advantages they have, it's amazing that we pretend that we don't know how to do it. We do know how to raise children to be members of the ruling class, powerful democratic citizens, and so forth. And but I don't think we think that that's the purpose of schools. And I don't know, I'm glad you brought up joy. I don't want to sound like a not believer in joy, but I think that what I would focus on is that school should be interesting. School should be a place that stimulates your curiosity and your imagination and your thinking about what could be. And I remember my daughter went to a Quaker summer camp in I think it was in Maryland. And she came home the first summer and said, why can't school be like that? She said, we learned all these things and there. We explored art and music, and I learned to swim, and I did this and I did that. Anyway, there's no reason why schools can't for most children be joyous. And even for sometimes children who are not joyous, withdrawn children, they need to be appreciated. They need to be cared, their ideas need to be taken seriously. So taking each other seriously.
Mm.
And taking parents, that's it. I raised 3 kids in New York public schools, and it was a mixed. My kids are wonderful, but I can't say that I didn't learn a lot about what I wanted schools to be by thinking about what was wrong with the kind of education they had. And one of the things is there was not a kind of relationship between families and school. And I think you can get away with that with parents who think they're important and assume that that they can trust the teachers. But I think we don't realize the price we pay. There's schools that don't respect the children's families, and for which parents, for good reasons, should be a little skeptical about whether the school is on their side.
Yeah.
And what's it like to be a student in a school where you think that your teachers don't respect your family?
Yeah. Well, I recently read something, I don't know if it was in the paper, I read it somewhere about a school somewhere in Manhattan where children were not coming into school. And the principal realized that parents were not sending them into the school because they didn't have clothes that were clean. And they didn't have them, they were living in shelters. They didn't have the money to get the clothes cleaned and all that. And so she used her brain. She got a washer and a dryer for the school, set it up in some place in the school where parents could come into the school and do their laundry.
Yes, but you need to think about how you could do that without it seeming insulting. In other words, I think it's a wonderful idea, but I can see how it could make parents feel that they are not respected. But it could be done. We have to. If we ourselves have a relationship with the parents that is respectful, then lots of things are possible that aren't possible
right
otherwise. And I have a relationship with lots of the parents that were in the school 20, 30 years ago, who we still have a relationship. They were people I got to know over many years, and that's the connection with democracy. Democracy assumes some mutual respect and mutual sense of power between people. And of course, our democracy wasn't designed to produce that. And it's never been as full as we would like it to be. And it's in danger now. But to spend 12 years in schools that are run on the basis of fear, not curiosity and excitement and interest, is not one that's likely to produce. It's the most undemocratic institution I have otherwise ever experienced in my life. And imagine schools that are supposed to prepare kids for democracy are the most authoritarian institutions. Yeah. Even the principal, Anne, I don't, maybe people don't understand that we too had to play tricks to prevent ourselves from getting in trouble with the authorities.
Anna, it's a good thing that Deborah brought up, because I've always wondered about that. Like, I would when I would go in to do consulting, right? So I would one day be in one school, another day be in another school, and then the third day I'd be at Brooklyn New School, and I would see like there was something quality review, and there was like hysteria in the 2 other schools, all right, because there was going to be a quality review, and calm. Like absolute calm in your school. Nobody was getting hysterical about it. And I could never figure out how you managed to do that, because you did have all of those
people
coming in and and all that. So how did you get away with it? What did you do? I mean, maybe other principals need to know what you did. Maybe there was something.
Well, I suspect we weren't afraid. Now, what made us not afraid? I've been exploring that too. In other words, uh, Elaine Schwartz has a school. What's the name of it now? It's a middle school in the West
The
Side.
center school.
Center school. And I don't know if she's still there. She's my age, but I don't know if she's still there or not. But she stayed for a long time because she was afraid of what would happen if somebody else came there. Would they, they'd left her alone. And her secret was being, the number of people I know who never heard of the center school, because Elaine felt she would be more secure if she was hidden.
Mm.
And I thought we'd be more secure if we got to be famous. But I think you have to go one or the other directions, unless you have a very powerful parent body. And, that can, in a sense, fight back from a political stance too. But I think it helped that I thought didn't go into education until I was in my 30s. I had already done several successful things. I didn't see myself, I think, as having any reason to fear anybody. Mm. But the other thing is, and I know there's a wonderful woman whom we tried to get to be principal at Mission Hill when I left, and she said, I can't lie. I'm a Jehovah's Witness, I forget, and we're not allowed to lie. And I said, what do you mean? What's that got to do with being a principal? She said, well, I think you fudge the truth sometimes when you're talking to the people downtown. And it's true. I don't know that I lie, but there's certain things I let them think we do that we don't do.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think it's actually a balance between being hidden and being visible, right? So that what you want visible is your philosophy, your perspective, your program, and then what's hidden is the things that are not that important. So I do, you have to fill out these accountability forms. I had to write a document about how we were going to get more parents to participate in the standardized test. So you do the form, you write as little as possible, and you submit it. So you get your paperwork done, but then you go back to doing the things that you value. And I also think you get left alone. What you were talking about with Elaine, you get left alone when you show that there's something that you value. It's hard to.
Yeah. And that you're not making any trouble for them.
Yeah.
I sometimes. Leaving them alone might not have worked in my case. I don't know about yours, because I sometimes was a troublemaker, and Elaine is very careful to. They'll leave her alone. She leaves them alone. Yeah. And I know a few other wonderful principals who have really gone out of their way to be unseen. Or whatever they say, it's positive and supportive of the central board, even though that's not what they think. Because
and when you said the tests came down to you, the request, not even a request, but being told that you need to order your standardized test. Where's that coming from?
It's a standard email that comes from the state or the city. You've got to order them because you got to get them. But the fact that hasn't been put on hold now just seems totally bizarre, And what a huge waste of money, right? I mean, there's something being paid for already.
Right.
So they have not announced that they're canceling these tests in the spring, which even if we are back in person, would be the wrong thing to do, right? To administer.
The wrong thing to do to start with.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But it's just the precious time that you do have with kids in this setting, to use that to prepare them for tests and to pretend that those scores have any meaning, even in the old terms, improvement. It's just hard for me to believe that we can't get over the testing, even though I think almost all educators know that they do more harm than good.
Yeah, now is the time. Easy, just that's it.
Yeah. Parents now. What I hear from a lot of parents, or through my family with younger friends, and all that, is that they're so fearful that their children are being are falling behind. All right. And I guess, to some degree, that is something to think about, that, especially maybe I think more older children than younger children, because as an early childhood teacher, I think, what do they mean by falling behind?
Well, I don't know
Is
what they
this
mean even on
person-
the high school level, quite frankly, having run a quite successful secondary school. I don't know what falling behind
Yeah, no, I mean, because I
I
can't.
know what it's like to go through a traumatic period. I think the children, there are a lot of things that are hurting our children, which is not falling behind. They're separated from their friends. They're afraid of illness. There are all kinds of things. This is a traumatic period for them, which in itself is a reason not to give another traumatic event.
Right. If we can.
It is ironic that they're falling behind. What does that mean? In fact, they're learning something that certainly I did not learn when I was their age. And it's really, when I think back, it's like, this is truly forming them as a generation in a way that is really fundamental. It's going to affect who they are as adults. Right. And I just hope it's resiliency that's learned and not something else.
If we thought of this as that this is maybe the curriculum to look at pandemics in history, to look at the human body, I mean, there are a lot of things that could be reassuring about find that knowledge is helpful, that ignorance is not a value, and children are baffled by this in many ways and scared because it's some terrible thing, but it's what it is. And even the data about it, you can do a lot of science and mathematics around studying the data that's coming out and demystifying that data, and also demystifying, just the misunderstanding people have of statistics that you could teach through this. But in any case, I do think, though, that the purpose of schools, and this is why I think that phrase "getting behind," is personal advancement. And I think for a lot of schools, it's quite clear. The idea is that there's a scale, a ladder, and the successful people get up the ladder and the unsuccessful people don't get up the ladder. And since the ladder is unchangeable, there's always going to be exactly the same number of people. The first step is the second step. I mean, it's designed testing to see that nothing changes. Right. And in fact, if poor kids and Black kids got better scores than white wealthy kids, they would throw the test out. They throw out individual items on tests if that happens. The items are designed to reproduce class and racial gaps. And but it's a ranking order. In other words, what we picture and you can get behind, it's a race. Only one person can win the race, and somebody will always be the last person across the line. And you want your child to be at the front of the line. And when I say to people, your child is doing fine, parents, including me, would say, compared to what? Because we live in a society where what we are doing is continuously comparing each other. Some of us are better, some worse. Think what we do with tracking in schools. I think all the Trump supporters were the kids who got tracked out of the upper echelons and were constantly shamed for being not being the stars in the school, not getting any of the awards.
Right.
And when we came to New York City, I went to enroll my children. My children weren't with me, but I find out how to enroll my children in the local public school. And they enrolled me without any bother, and they put them in classes. They put them in the top track classes. They didn't ask for their school records. Mm-hmm. It just so happens that I was white and middle class, and we were automatically, and they're probably right. My children probably would have scored well on the tests.
Right. I had something like that happen when we got back from living in Italy, and we stayed with my sister for a month in Staten Island. And I thought my daughter had been bounced all over the place. We traveled for weeks. Let's let her go into school for this month. I knew we were going to be going somewhere else after that. And so I brought her to the school, and the principal immediately said she needs to be in our gifted and talented class. All right. So Simona went into that class. All right. I didn't, I didn't believe in gifted and talented, but it was like a hard time for us, and I wasn't arguing with it. And we were staying with my sister. Simona was upstairs with my niece and nephew, and Simon and I were sleeping downstairs in a finished basement. In the middle of the night, she came downstairs and woke us up. And she said, test me on math. And I said, what? What are you talking about? She said, big numbers like 32 and 51. Quick, I have to do it quick. And it turns out that what they were doing is they were going up and down the aisle. They were sitting in rows up and down the aisle, and the children had to know these numbers really quickly. And so we immediately took her out of school, and said, she's better off with us, that whole, immediately she's put into this class that wasn't even a good class. It was nothing, I don't understand why they call it gifted and talented, but yeah, I agree. I think you're right, Deborah. But now I'm thinking of your two schools, more than two schools for you, Deborah. And I actually never had the privilege of going to Central Park East when I was teaching, but I went there with you once, actually, for some show that they put on. I don't know if you remember, but
music. It was musical. I think it was music or something.
Yes. But I've read about it I've read about it a lot and heard about it a lot, and I think it's a new time now, and I think a lot of teachers now, young teachers, they don't even know about it. They don't know anything about that. All this incredible stuff that took place in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and it disappeared. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of not good things were going on then too, but I think as a teacher, I had much more ability to have the classroom that I wanted. Then I think if I went back into the school now, I wouldn't be able to. But all right, so we have these two wonderful schools. I'll say again what I started out with: how can you be models for this big system that we have? All right, I mean, I think public schools are so important. I think we can't give up on public schools, because you talk about democracy. We need public schools if we're going to have a democracy, and we need good public schools.
Yeah, we need schools that teach.
Schools.
We say and I think it's well accepted that to learn something, you need to see it at work. You can't just learn about science, you have to do some science.
Yes.
So you can't just learn about what happened there.
Yeah, you disappeared.
I disappeared. Well, how do I get undisappeared?
You're talking, but
you lost your camera. Probably touched something. That's what happened.
No, I know. I got that. And let me see.
Look at the bottom.
Lost her completely. Wait, right?
Or we'll have your voice at least,
No, I think we did.
Deborah?
I think we lost Deborah's voice.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I think she just went, she might come back.
Okay, well, let us talk, all right? So Anna, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting when you said that. I was thinking about how Brooklyn New School Central Park East was the model for Brooklyn New School. So historically, if we look at schools are models for other schools. Right. The question is whether or not how we can make that a more consistent thing. And I don't know the answer to it other than talking to people and keep pushing it. So I do think there are schools like Brooklyn New School around. I mean, Central Park East, in a way, was also the model for Castle Bridge, right? That's uptown. So it does happen. It just doesn't happen in this sort of systemic way. It happens in this more, this school and then that school.
Yeah, but I think it's slowed down a lot. Even when, what was his name? Klein started lots of small schools, but he started them. But small schools are a vehicle for doing something. They're not a magical cure for anything. Right. And what they are is they make running a democratic environment much easier in a small school. A big school begins to have committees of committees. In a small school, you can all sit around one table and work things out together. But people have to have some power, because that's what democracy rests on, people thinking that they matter and their ideas matter, which means that there's some power behind their ideas. And to create a community in which the adults, at least, teachers, principal, and parents feel powerful. It is not the view, it's not anyone's mind, I even think. Even a lot of progressive educators sometimes talk about running a class democratically. But and that means less to me than how the adults are treating each other. I think kids learn a lot by watching the environment, the way teachers interact with each other, the way teachers interact with their families, the way teachers treat the custodian. I mean, they learn by watching the world they're going to enter into. That's, you know, that's how we learn to talk. That's how we learn everything else. Mm-hmm. But we've created an adult environment for 12 years that children live in, which is the most hierarchical, fear-based system, which people are always trying to catch you. And anyway, so if we thought that democracy was really important, we would see that the goal of a school is not individual advancement, which half can't always fail, but we'll see by measuring the relationships. And there are a lot of ways that happen easily in a small school. They're much harder to do in a big school. They're not impossible. And you can run a small school as a very efficient tyranny. Right. So in fact, in many ways, it's easier. My friends all liked large schools because no one ever bothered them. There were too many of them for principals to walk into their room. So in some ways, you could do your own thing, whether it was good or bad. You could close the door and do your own thing. In a small school, that's harder. Your colleagues know what's going on. You all know each other, and you all are in the game together. And you really want solutions to things, not just getting beyond it. You want to figure it out. And
do you think this is, see, most schools in a city, at least, probably in, more suburban areas or rural areas, it's different, but in city, most schools are big schools. They are. They're not. There's not that many small schools. So are they hopeless? Is it hopeless?
Well, first of all, they can divide up into small communities. In a big school, they can do that if they think that would be an good idea. Mm. But to impose it on people is another thing. I mean, the people in the small schools in New York that Ann and I know, by the way, Paul Schwartz was involved in the Brooklyn New School, wasn't he, Ann?
Yes, he was the first
yeah.
director.
And he took that, anyway, he and I would meet once a week during those first few years, and he would take me out to dinner and talk about his dilemmas and his insecurities. And anyway, so I have a special feeling about that place. Yeah. But you can't get there if the people in power don't want you to get there. And I do not think, listen, they essentially closed at a successful secondary school. Everybody came to visit there. Books were written about, articles written about it. And shortly after I left there, they closed it and reopened. They kept the same name, but they reopened it with a new principal and a very traditional, and they began to screen kids to get in on the basis of test scores. They just changed the whole school. Why? That was done by somebody in the central board. Yeah. And I wasn't there to make trouble. And some of the teachers in the school who would have made trouble had started new schools themselves, because we thought it would be in the new schools, when they started having new schools like Julia Richmond, we thought that our teachers would be terrific leaders of schools like that. So we lost some of our most articulate, feisty teachers. There has to be a climate around the school in this country again, and I think we may be heading there. I'm hopeful, because there's a lot of things about this new young generation that suggests that their picture of what democracy is not so unhealthy. It's troublemakers, citizens who see themselves having a stake in things, and they cause trouble. And I think we have to get back to that, so that people like you and I, Anne, are surrounded by a climate that says that what we're doing is the right thing.
Well, I like on something positive. I mean, I felt like when I was in school, I was a little bit of a troublemaker, maybe. Yeah. But I think I hope we have a lot of troublemakers coming out of this. I hope that teachers and principals are sick of what's been happening and saying, no, we have to change things.
Well, some of those teachers, right, in the time we're talking about, some of the teachers were people who were part of the 60s generation.
Right.
So there were a lot of sort of resistant, troublemaking teachers who came into teaching in the 60s, who made a lot of this easier for us to do.
Right. I mean, I think the new teachers who sort of went into charter schools and things like that. But I think this is a good time to make changes. I think this is a very good time to make changes. I think that I think people are tired of what's been happening. All right. Hopeful of what might possibly be happening. And I mean, I personally think that if people who are in education, people who are interested in education, would speak up and say, enough of this nonsense. I mean, Scott, my friend Scott, he said that unfortunately we're being held up to some kind of global competition, right? Now he teaches in high school, so I don't know, maybe they're thinking of that. But if I think about global competition, the schools that are doing really well globally are schools that are like in Scandinavia, or say, or even in some places in China now. Things are changing. So I think that we have other models that we could hold up and say, look what's happening here. Look at the way teachers are respected here. Look at how children are respected, and the whole community is respected. And let's, like when we went to Reggio Emilia, there was such a feeling of respect for the whole community. This is the time. I think this is the time. And I really hope that.
And I do think it may happen. I do think we're in a very transitional time right now, with education is all over the place and confused. And, there's all the outdoor learning that's going on, the pods in the park. I don't know if you've seen them. And it is a transitional time. So let's hope that somehow there are people who will speak up, whether it's parents or teachers, and it will look different in September. That's my hope.
I call it the interplay of democracy and play in education. We haven't really talked about play, but I think
play is.
Deborah, yeah?
No, it seems to me play is a respectful way to honor and enjoying children's play and setting up a place where they can use their own agency, their own ideas, is what I think play is.
Yes, exploration.
And
right.
That's when we don't respect that, it's probably because we don't really want to know what children are thinking and about the world.
Well, I hope that, as I said, Anna, I like your feeling of that something good is going to come out of this.
Maybe. I'm gonna.
And I hope that people will speak up now, and I hope that somebody better is put into it can't be worse. So that somebody good will be put into
Up at the top, you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
and keep my fingers crossed on that.
Yeah, because I don't think they're looking for someone like the person you and I would look for.
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. And I agree with you on that. But,
By accident, we might get.
somebody a little bit better, at least,
As you say, it can't be worse.
No, it can't. I mean, I have a friend who is actually working in that department, and it's been like a nightmare for her, a terrible, terrible nightmare. And so, it has to get better. It has to get better. And I think, we have voices, all right, with more experience. And so I think maybe it's our responsibility to support those other people who have less experience, but who know that something's wrong. They know that something's wrong. And
we often try to shield people, the teachers who work in our schools and the parents, from what we do, from having to confront the troublemaking role they have. We're kind of a buffer principles. And I think looking back on it, I did too much of that. I don't think I prepared the staff for being troublemakers themselves in the political world of education. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
right.
I think we tend to want to shield teachers from that so they can put their energy just on the community they're part of it, rather than having to spend their time strategizing about how to protect themselves. But it also may have shielded them too much from understanding that we have to that there's a fight going on for the future. And
I felt like when Bernie Sanders was in the race, I felt like there was a real spark of this feeling from the 60s, and hopefully there are enough people who got that spark with them, and then we'll keep it going. I think that we should maybe at this point stop, but I just feel like I just feel honored, the two of you.
I hope if I'm in New York sometime when school is on, which may not be this year.
Right.
I'd love to visit the new school.
I'll go with you. I love going there.
I think we should sort of make a list of what has survived this last 20 years, because I think a lot of the people who survived did go under the table a little bit and didn't speak up as much, because did what Elaine Schwartz did. But so there may have been more survivors than I realize. And so I think what we need to do is make a plan to visit different schools and see how many of them are still wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's probably more than we, maybe not as perfect as we want, but I see changes. I did some work in a school in Red Hook, all right, Anna, and I think they've been doing work with your school, and that's been creating a change.
Which school is it?
Yes, 15.
Oh yeah. No, there's some really nice things happening.
Definitely been creating a change in that school. So I mean, and that's not it's not a huge school, but it's not a small school in the way that you're talking about it. And so I think that there's hope. I've been doing work in a school in Flushing, Queens, where they've been making a lot of changes, and we have to just keep plugging away. Anyway, thank both of you so much for speaking here.
And one thing you can do for us, Renee.
Okay, tell me what to do.
Is I think about the kind of thing you've done in this program, of how we could make that, how there could be a center like the old teachers centers were at City College. How we can create some place where we see each other so that we know we're not alone in this. And the coalition went under, and the workshop centers don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we lose track of each other and we need each other. So I'm giving you that job.
Okay. I'll see what I could do. I don't know.
Via social media.
I
Yeah.
actually, that's the new way that people meet up now. And
That's right.
this is a good
Right.
thing to start it.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's really an extension of this to figuring out how we can know we can know what's going on and be there to support each other.
Right. And maybe even to start with like a list of essentials.
Mhm.
What are the essentials, Anyway, I need to say goodbye to you guys, and I think that this has been really wonderful. And I think it's really important that this is going to be shared with teachers and parents.
Okay, I'll look forward to seeing it.
All right, Deborah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll say goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Anne.
Deborah.
Nice to see you. Could you see me at the end of that?
No, wait.
I disappeared.